It is the Knights Reports presented by Smile Generation as we go around the horn. Darren Millard, Stormy Buonantony, Shane Natty, and Gary Lawless. A lot to get to on this edition. The American Hockey League canceling its season. The Vegas Golden Knights getting ready to welcome in Jack Dugan, a fifth-round draft choice from 2017. He's been much talked about and is ready to launch his pro career. And we have, of course, Stormy's one-timers at the end of the show that we always look forward to. Out of the gate, this Knights Report presented by Smile Generation. Pleased to bring in from Fox Sports Radio Las Vegas. He's the drive time host. It is JT the Brick. And JT, you will notice that when you look at your screen here in this call, Stormy's very tidy, so you can see her background is well displayed. Gary Lawless is a little more close up, and Shane Natty displays the spare room because he throws his back out every now and then. And he has to lie down. What's on your bookshelf and your background?
Well, I got a pretty good bookshelf. My whole career of books that I don't read, but makes for a good backdrop. When we look at the history of sports, I have everything from memorabilia, helmets, and hockey pucks and books throughout my career on the radio. But it is a pleasure to be here. I've interviewed all of you over the years, and I can't thank you enough for having me on because you've provided so much great content for me on the Knights flagship station over the last couple of years that it's great to join you.
So do you sense that it's turning a little bit in your conversations on Fox Sports Radio?
Yeah, there's some good news. The UFC fight over the weekend was a really big moment, I think, in the virus and where we're going to go next. Dana White had the ability to put on a fight card without fans. One of the fighters tested positive along with two people in the corner, and they were still able to go on. And we're going to look back, I think, 6 months from now, maybe 3 months from now, to see how primitive that testing format was and how far ahead we're going to be 3 or 6 months from now, or maybe 2 months from now, that we'll be able to test more players and there'll be an opportunity for fans to be tested at a bigger rate and we can get back to some normalcy with sports. But at least the commissioners are all talking together. And I think once the leagues start communicating and we see more events that go live, NASCAR, clearly this week, we'll have more positive stories that we can build some momentum.
What sort of was – oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
It's interesting. You're talking about testing. I just spoke to Marc-Andre Fleury earlier this morning for another project. And after we were done and we turned the recorder off, he said, "What do you think?" And I said, well, clearly there's lots of will to go forward and do it. And he said, I ran at the UFC fight. I watched it. It was good to see some live sports. But then he said to me, he goes, what about the testing? What's going to happen if a player on a roster tests positive? And all those questions that come from that to me, it's one thing for Dana White and his athletes. There's no players association per se that has 50% of the say in UFC. It's kind of what Dana White says goes, and good for him. That's a nice way to run your league. But in the NHL, MLB, like the MLB owners this morning, they voted to go move forward with a proposal. Now the players have to sign off on it. To me, that's the next little stage or era that we're getting into, and it's going to be interesting to see how the players react to these proposals.
Gary, that's a really important point because Dr. Fauci recently talked to Peter King about this. What happens if in football multiple players test positive? What happens if LeBron James is in the NBA Western Conference Finals and he and two teammates, test positive and they have to shut down that round? Same goes for hockey. If we're looking at the Golden Knights or another team and that roster all of a sudden gets infected, what do you do? And those are really tough questions to have now when it comes, as you make a great point, a big sports league with big rosters compared to individual sports like the PGA with golfers. But I think what it's going to come down to is isolating these athletes. And if one tests positive or two, you take them off the ice, you take them off the court, and your expanded roster gives you the ability to still compete. But it is a very complex question now. But I'm just happy that all the athletes and all the sports that I'm talking to understand that their salary is at stake, television revenues at stake, entertainment for the fans is at stake, and most of them want to get out there and compete again.
obviously, JT, we're all still learning as we go, and maybe the way that the UFC did it wasn't perfect, and probably won't be for a while. But I was just curious, what was your thoughts on watching the UFC event and seeing social distancing in there utilized, but also kind of not utilized at times, because everybody there had tested negative, but they were still masks and they were still practicing social distancing. But then you have an interview at the center. So curious your thoughts on how that all kind of transpired.
Stormy, that's a great question, because I was looking on, watching it, and I was a little bit alarmed about how the mask was on outside the octagon with some. The ring gal that came in between rounds didn't have it on. Joe Rogan with his interview didn't have it on. Dana White, but they really thought it out. I think the key was everybody was comfortable because they were all tested. And as members of the media, when we get an opportunity to go back and there's testing in place and we have to go through that testing protocol, I think that we'll all be comfortable going into an arena and see what happens. The thing that gets alarming is what happens if a couple of those fighters who fought on Saturday night test positive on Wednesday, Thursday, the following week, and then you have to do the tracking and you have to look back at who they were in contact with. It is really complicated. It's very important, these questions. I think everyone has to be a little bit more safer than possible as we open up the economy, which the sports economy is going to play such a big role. Everyone's got to be healthy when they go to these events. Everybody's got to follow the protocol. Everyone's got to follow the rules. And I know that I'm going to do it if I get an opportunity to go to a Golden Knights game or a Raiders game eventually, to show up and follow the protocol, and hopefully we'll all be tested and we'll be testing negatively.
The other thing on that, JT, is it's our first time to view without fans. What do you think the appetite, and how do you think optically it came off, watching this event? I watched part of it, and I maybe because we're so starved right now to see sports, but is this something you can see in hockey, football, baseball, and people enjoying it?
Really important, Shane, when you look at that, because it works well with the UFC, because the camera angles go into the octagon and there's a camera person hanging over the octagon. So you don't really have to see much of the background. When I go to heavyweight fights in Vegas all the time, we're always looking for the celebrities in the first 2 or 3 rows, but we don't see past that. So I think boxing and UFC, NASCAR, all that's going to be different. But what gets me going about hockey, what I love the most about the NHL is the crowd noise and how intense and how loud it is at the Fortress when there's a break in the action and you can hear the crowd getting behind the music and the in-ice entertainment, and no one does it better than the Vegas Golden Knights. And that would be different to just watch hockey, but to hear the players talking back and forth, hear the coaches yelling out the line changes, to be able to hear the puck and where it's going a little bit more, that could be interesting. But I'm optimistic that with social distancing and proper testing, when the postseason gets going, hopefully later in the postseason, we can see sports with fans, but I don't think it's going to happen in the beginning.
What's your takeaway from hosting the Drive Show on Fox Sports Las Vegas, and what you've learned about talk radio and dealing with the pandemic, which is nothing that you've ever been through? Lockouts maybe, but certainly not a scale of this.
Great question. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself as a broadcaster. Everybody comes up to me and they say, what have you been talking about? And it's never been easier for these last 6+ weeks, because the Golden Knights, the organization, has been providing all of you to come on with me, and the fans are really rabid for that here in Vegas. On my national platform, it was all NFL. So we had NFL free agency with Tom Brady, biggest name in the history of sports leaving. So that drummed it up. The NFL draft, as everyone's team is improving. Then you had trades mixed in along with that, and then the schedule release. So I haven't had a blip. On Mondays and Fridays, I'm talking about The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. That's compelling documentary work, which I love. So it hasn't really affected me yet, everybody, but we have passion for sports. And I always thought, I thought I guessed right with this. The first 6 or 7 weeks, we'd be talking about the sports that were going and what I just mentioned. And from here on out, we are going to talk about the passion for sports to come back. When is the NHL coming back? When is MLB coming back? What are the experts saying? And that will ramp up as more and more sports come. And in my perfect world, we could be sitting here at the end of July into August talking about the Masters around the horizon, these majors in golf, and unbelievable sporting events all colliding at the same time. And then there will be no vacation. There will be no time off. And the show prep will be amazing because we'll have 6 or 7 major leagues coming back at once, and the content could be tremendous.
Gretzky going from the Oilers to the Kings is a bigger deal than Brady going from the Pats to the Bucks. Just to be clear.
I remember that well, Gary, and there's no doubt that was huge at the time. And I'm a big Gretzky fan. We've talked about these Mount Rushmore lists, and all of you could know on this, from the Bobby Orr goal, the 50th anniversary. You all came on my show to talk about our Mount Rushmores. On any combination Mount Rushmore that you have with multiple sports, I have Wayne Gretzky in any 4 that I put out. That's for sure.
Which is the better book, Slash's biography or Ray Guy's Hang Time?
Ooh, I know Ray Guy well, so I'm gonna have to go with Ray Guy. But there's some great sports books and.
Well, you've got them. They're down in your bookshelf there. I'm just reading what you've got. I like it that you're not a phony. There's no Churchill mixed in here. You're not trying to pull the wool over our eyes. You are who you are, JT. I love it.
Yeah, there's a couple over here to my left that are a little bit, my Gene Simmons autograph book and a couple of my Slash books and my rock and roll books that I have there too. But, I love talking sports because it's not politics. I don't have to go on every day and talk about the politics of sports. And that's one of the things I wanted to mention now for all of us combined on this Zoom call, is that now politics is coming into our sports. Hockey, the NFL, we're having to listen to Dr. Fauci. We're having to listen to politicians, governors that are going to open up certain states before others. And it's kind of unfortunate that politics is creeping into sports because we're going to need the politicians and the scientists to get sports going again.
JT, and just to back you, I remember you all get to ask us questions. You asked us that Mount Rushmore, and it's tough. I'm going to steal Stormy. What was the sit one with, you had Gretzky, Orr, and
oh yeah, it was
Bobby
like
Orr and Gordie Howe.
Right. Yeah, it was like kiss, marry, kill, but it was start, sit, or limited ice time
turn.
For those 3.
Start, sit, limited ice time. Gretzky, Orr, and Howe. What's your order?
In limited ice time?
Yeah.
Start, sit, or bench?
Start, sit, or bench.
No, Gary. Start, sit, or limited ice time.
Well, when I've seen it as start, sit, or bench.
Well, you're wrong.
Okay. Sure.
Gordie Howe, correct me if I'm wrong, would want and fight you for the most ice time, correct?
Good. Yeah.
That is fair to say. And I would never take Gretzky off the ice. And I know Bobby Orr had tremendous legs and he had the ability to play multiple minutes in big games. But I go, Howe is the ultimate tough guy, the ultimate competitor, and Gretzky, the guy that I would never touch. I would leave him on the ice until he came huffing and puffing over to the bench.
Let the record show JT just sat out Bobby Orr.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I would sit him out over those 2. I'd have.
No, I didn't. I was sitting Gordie just to have him on the bench looking scary. I had Bobby playing the most and Gretzky limited.
I'd play Orr the most as well because he could defend and score.
Stormy?
It's such a lose. Like,
you can't win.
They're all so great. Like,
terrible question.
Can you imagine somebody saying I'm sitting Wayne Gretzky? It's not a terrible question. It's interesting.
Is there any way I could get my hero Mike Bossy in this conversation? The guy I grew up with in high school, 4 straight cups, and to see Bossy streaking down the right side and Trottier looking for him and dumping it off with that one-timer. That was my youth growing up in Massapequa, Long Island, and the Coliseum in Uniondale rocking to 4 cups in a row. And that's what I'm expecting to see at the Fortress once the Golden Knights knock down their first cup and they're on to multiple championships.
I know Michelle Dion would appreciate you mentioning Mike Bossy because he always gets the lit up on that one goal that Bossy was dancing on. Best pure goal scorer, in my opinion. But that's for another call and another debate between Shane Knighty and Gary Lawless. How did you 2 end up fighting over top of JT?
It's just natural.
Did you expect anything else?
We do what we do.
JT, how much better dressed are you right now than you normally would be on a radio show?
Well, it's, professional up top and the party downstairs as always. As
Can you stand up for us? Can you?
Yeah, let's see the sweatpants.
I'll stay right here because again, that party downstairs. I just got out of my pool. One of the things about living out here in Summerlin is we're 5 degrees cooler than it is on the other side of town. Remember that. That's JT advice, and I'm able to get in and out of the pool this time of year. But I'm usually able to get away sometime in the summertime to head back home. And I think we're all going to be bunkered down through the heat of the summer, waiting for the NHL to come back. So all hands on deck when the sport comes back.
Say hi to John Gruden for us, okay?
I will. And I'll tell you one thing about that. I'm happy you mentioned him and Mark Davis. They love the experience of a Golden Knight game. When they're sitting behind the goal there and you can just see them locked in. It's been great to see. I'm so proud to be on the flagship of the Vegas Golden Knights because the synergy has been so incredible, not only with UNLV and the Raiders and the Aviators, but everybody coming together in this community. And with the Golden Knights being the first sports team to come to this town, it is better than I expected. I am a diehard fan. I never expected to see anything at this level so quickly. The big moments, too, that were very serious, like 1 October when this franchise put themselves in the back seat and paid tribute to all the heroes and those who put their lives up front. That was incredible. It won everyone over. And every night that I get a chance when I'm not on the air to go down to a game at T-Mobile and to watch hockey. My wife didn't grow up with it. Now when we come home and we're able to put on a game on television and watch you guys in the broadcast on radio or TV, it's really been a game changer for everyone here in Southern Nevada, and I love it.
Appreciate those words, and right back at you. Talk radio's played a really important role in getting a lot of us through this, and you're at the center of that, giving us a distraction and keeping us informed. So keep up the good work, both nationally and on the flagship station, Fox Sports Radio, Las Vegas. Thanks, JT.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Tonight's report presented by Smile Generation continues. Millard, Naidi, Bonatoni, and Gary Lawless. You know how long I practiced Bonatoni, by the way, before I actually went on the air? Like, it was over and over and over. And now I'm so proud that it just rolls off the tongue. What's the worst you've ever heard it butchered, Stormy?
Bucatani. There's no K, there's no C, there's no nothing. I don't even know how that's a thing. But I remember before the first time we went on air, you came up to me like 3 times that day, just re-asking, just to be sure. It's Bonatoni, right?
Please, help me out.
Now we know what we can call her. Buka.
No!
Bucatoni.
We have a new nickname. Well, Nige, you know all about
My name's been butchered.
Yeah,
for
Shane
years.
Hindi.
Oh, yeah, Hindi, Naidi, and many things.
National Hockey League games. Have you ever heard it? Did you ever hear it mispronounced at that level?
Well, I didn't know that level. I don't believe so. Maybe early on when I first started, before maybe my first year, but it didn't bother me. Whatever. If they were saying whatever, any part of my name in the NHL, I had no problem with it.
There you go.
Some news coming out. The American Hockey League. I think we all kind of expected this, but it is official. The American Hockey League has canceled the rest of its season. There will not be a Calder Cup presented in 2020. Gary, just your thoughts on this, and then just the impact or influence this has or doesn't have on the National Hockey League.
Well, I think if the National Hockey League returns, they're going to need a lot of those AHL players because they're going to have to expand rosters. You're going to have instead of having 23 or 24 guys around, you're going to need 30 guys around. And so, the AHL, they don't have a TV contract, don't have big TV revenues to rely on. So all of the finances for that league are dependent upon the gate and what the parent NHL team will trickles down to that level. So this is not a surprise, but it's disappointing. And Shane has competed for the Memorial Cup. That's they're not going to award that this year. The Calder Cup, Shane played in the American League. I worked in the American League covered it for 10 years. They're not going to award the Calder Cup this year. It's disappointing to see some of the oldest trophies in North American sport right up there with the Stanley Cup and the Grey Cup as the really old ones that they're not going to be awarded this year. As a lifelong sports fan, these are important trophies, and it's understandable because of the pandemic and and the economic situation we're in, but it's very disappointing.
Yeah, I think you're just going to, unfortunately, also the ECHL, the Kelly Cup, I believe, competed for that too.
Yep.
In the finals. It's, it's tough to see these leagues and for these players, but the American Hockey League, for, what Gary said, Darren, Storm, I believe, you have to have more players. It's if the NHL is going to come back, you cannot have, guys away. It'll be, the teams that would have their American Hockey League teams still playing would be at a disadvantage of having, enough guys. So, but it is, we're in that, right now on unknowing times, and difficult decisions have to be made.
Well, and those reserves, especially, given that when the NHL does return, they're going to have to go through that training camp period. Injuries seem pretty inevitable around the league. So for you being able to have access to any of those players will be huge. But I thought it was just crazy. I was reading something like 75 to 85% of AHL revenues are generated by ticket sales. So I'd be interested to see, even when the AHL comes back, since there's so many question marks about fans being in the stands, how troubling like that will even be moving into next season, because that's obviously where they're putting all of their focus now.
Yeah, well, the NHL organizations are going to need their prospects to play somewhere and in some fashion. So I think we should also note that, probably pretty disappointing for Dave Andrews, the longtime president of the American League, who did
3 decades there.
Fantastic job running that league, building that league, growing it, and making it what it is today. That he's retiring. Scott Howson is taking over, and Dave won't be able to hand out the Calder Cup this year. I think that's probably he's had a wonderful career and he'll get over it, but it's got to be disappointing for him.
Toughest decision he makes is the last one. In a lot of regards. Shane, just the relationship between the AHL canceling its season doesn't necessarily have any influence or steps or connecting the dots, the lines to the NHL, right?
No, not in my mind. In my mind, it's doing it to almost in preparation for the NHL to continue and to go and to have those players available for their clubs to go to an expanded roster, as Gary mentioned. So, no direct correlation at all, and hopefully we'll see. There's still some things to be announced. I think we might hear some good news this week. I'm still being optimistic, guys.
Attaboy. Congratulations, Jack Dugan, a top 10 finalist for the Hobey Baker Award, a 2017 draft pick of the Vegas Golden Knights in the 5th round, and was great. Led the nation in scoring in NCAA hockey with Providence Friars. And Gary, some news regarding his professional career.
Yeah, he's agreed to, has agreed to terms with the Golden Knights at this juncture. No one's really signing contracts right now because, we don't know when seasons are going to start, where guys would go. So he's agreed to turn pro. He would have had a phone conversation with Kelly McCrimmon, and his agent would have been involved, and they would have figured out, all of the terms of their agreement, but just not putting pen to paper at this juncture, and that'll come down the road. But suffice to say that Jack Dugan is now a member of the VGK.
Yeah,
high-end skills.
Picks. Yeah, and a 5th round pick, one of those ones that developed a little later. We always talk about, the biggest difference between junior and college players. Sometimes college players take a little longer, and for Dugan, that's exactly it. He's not an 18, 19-year-old kid. He's developed older, and a nice pick for the Golden Knights, and a good prospect.
Well, and what I like about Jack, I know, Darren, you had a chance to talk to him a good bit this year, but he's just a guy with a big chip on his shoulder, that underdog mentality, which I think really fits the mold of a Vegas Golden Knights player in general. He didn't get drafted when he wanted to. Then when he does get drafted, he gets pushed to the 5th round, and he's just a guy that really has set unique personal goals for himself. I remember the conversation that he told people about that he had with George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon, saying that he wanted to go out this season and dominate college hockey, and that's what he did.
You're right, Stormy. And Shane, from an athlete side of things, playing with a chip on the shoulder can be a real motivating thing.
Well, I think it's something that drives an athlete, drives you to be a competitor. Is sometimes that fire isn't there, and you get comfortable. Well, he doesn't seem to be that type of mentality, and if he can use that chip, whatever it is, to drive him forward as he did this year to have such success, it's going to get even harder as he gets to pro. It is a big jump. It'll be interesting to watch his progress, how he moves along, and how he's able to adapt.
I see him in the garage with you and Mike McKenna, and you guys all working on your skills together, doing that kind of thing. He's from that skill coach generation.
Oh yes, skill coach.
That wasn't meant to be a shot.
When are you guys going to start doing it?
That wasn't meant to be a shot. Please don't take it as a shot. I love those.
I haven't done them in years. I'm amazed I can still do them.
I watched you doing those the hop thing the other day. I went and tried to do it myself. I got a garbage can and flipped it over, and the whole right side of my body is bruised right now. If I had had my daughter in the room videoing that one, Shane,
that would have been good.
That would have been the blooper and highlight reel of my life.
We need to get Dave Gosher to do a Dave in the life of that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm not involved with Dave in this. Dave's not involved in this.
Let's leave him. He's good. We got enough. There's enough Dave out there. We don't need
projects going right now.
This is the Knights Report presented by Smile Generation, Nighty, Bonatoni, Lawless, and Millard. And the point in the program where we always like to turn things over to Stormy for a little bit of fun. So, Stormy, what do you have planned this week?
What do you got, Boots?
Stop. We're not making that name a thing. It's not happening. So my question this week, which I'm really interested specifically in hearing Shane's answer, because he's worked in hockey as a player and now like his entire life has revolved around the sport. If you didn't work in sports, what do you think you'd be doing?
That's a good one.
That's a really good one. I don't know if I'm qualified in anything else.
Hold on. You were a bouncer for a while?
Yeah, I did lots of things. What would I be doing? You know what? I'll go last. I need to think about that. I never had to think about anything else. It was always hockey. And
so when you when you retired,
well, I guess, yeah. You know what?
You had to contemplate a few things.
But I didn't think about that at the time. I always thought about getting into radio, more of like, I've always liked talk radio, as being a disc jockey, or, kind of the mix. I did some, the Hillman Morning Show in Boston, and I really got drawn to that. That's what kind of led to thinking of it when I was going to be done playing. So maybe that's it. Maybe I would have been a disc jockey, just spinning discs all day long.
You basically do that on the road anyways.
I know. So something with music. I can't play. I can't actually no talent to perform it, but I love to play it.
Okay, what format would you want to be the DJ?
Oh,
do you gotta have some kind of music? Rock? Okay. I thought you might have went country, but
well, now I would. But I'm thinking back then, if hockey didn't work out, I would have went radio. Back then, it was the '90s, right? And you're still just getting out of the hair metal bands, and yeah. And then the grunge was coming in.
What would your radio DJ name be?
Well, I have to go with the Sheriff. I didn't have it then, but it sticks. All right, move on. Somebody else. I struggled.
My DJ name in college was Brad Johnson. They made us change our name, so I was BJ the DJ. That was I know. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Maybe don't tell people that.
It's too late now.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just
kidding. Man, what would you do? What would you do?
Underwear model.
Want to stand up for us?
I can't.
Please?
Tidy whities, boxers, which way? Which way you going?
Jammies.
I would have been a lawyer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How so? Like, what makes you say that?
My whole plan was to be a lawyer. I went to see my brother, who was a lawyer, and he was articling on a firm in downtown Toronto. I went to visit him one day, and he was in like a broom closet with like stacks of files on his desk. I said, "Hey, let's go for lunch." I don't have time. Okay, I'll wait around. We'll go for a beer. I'm going to be here till 9 or 10 o'clock. Okay, well, we'll grab something to eat. No, I got to be back here at 5 a.m. I walked out of there. I said, I'm not doing that.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Is that where you get your skills to argue?
I'll tell you what, I'll phone my brother when I was, I've been lucky enough to be at the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup or whatever. I always phone him and remind him. And he's like, he made way more money than me, but he's always like, you picked the right one, pal. I got to write some guy's will right now, and you're going to watch the Super Bowl. So anyways, but I the underwear model thing,
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, maybe a second career.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Silks only. What about you, Darren?
I think I'd be an accountant. Just love numbers. Very good at numbers. I don't know. I don't know. You know what? Long haul truck driver.
Yes.
I enjoy being by myself, and
And the world would enjoy that as well.
yes, you're right.
Having you
Are
locked
you a
up
good
by
driver?
I'm a pretty good driver. I mean, I don't think I'd be very good in the cities parking the darn thing, but I think I can get across the country okay. I'd have to do small cities only, but that's something that I always like to do that. Maybe later in life, do something like that.
What about you, Stormy?
Well, I don't really know. I originally, when I started college, I thought I was going to be a nurse. Like that's what I was doing all my prerequisites for. And then I took a radio television elective, and that all got thrown out the window when I started doing this. And I can't really imagine doing anything else. So I think about it all the time. Like if I didn't do this, like I'm not really good at anything else. I don't know what I could do.
We're all in that boat.
Yeah.
Lawyer and nurse, and Nadia and I are radio disc
A
jockey
DJ and a truck driver.
I thought bartending was pretty cool when the movie Cocktail came out. You know, flipping bottles and
Roadhouse.
Yeah, see, I was influeed by those movies.
Yeah, not bad.
I'm going to tell you what Shane would be. He'd be an actor. He'd be a stuntman or an action movie actor.
I don't know if he could be a stuntman with the way he throws his back out all the time now.
No, it's good now. I'm fine. Just I didn't miss a day because of it. I'm good with pain, so stuntman would be good.
Yeah, you fought your way through it. Nice job. Stormy, you want to end us off here?
Thanks so much, everybody, for participating in today's little silly question challenge. Appreciate it. Wonderful Nights Report show.
That should be the title, Stormy's Silly Question.
That is great. The Nights Report presented by Smile Generation. Thanks for watching and tuning in, and hopefully we see you back at the rink very soon.